Okay, so Mordechai gets appointed to become like the judge at the king's gate and the head of all the other guards. Actually, that job was originally the job of Bigtan and Teresh. And they become very dejected. Now, Bigtan and Teresh were upset for a few reasons. Firstly, Bigtan and Teresh were actually relatives of Vashti. Yes. And when she got killed, Bigtan and Teresh, the Me'amlois teaches us,
relatives?
we don't know distantly, but no, they weren't her brothers. She had no brothers alive. I remember
No, they were brothers?
They may have been relatives, like cousins or something. It doesn't say that they were actually brothers, but they were related to Vashti.
How do we know?
The Me'amlois gives us the Makor, I'm not sure. Can't remember. I read it at the back.
Cousin?
Somewhere in the Talmud. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And they... So number one, they're very disgruntled for a number of reasons. Number one, they're upset that their connection in the palace is gone now. Because Vashti was like their relative, their connection in the palace. Number two, they used to be the head of all the other guards. They had a nice cushiony job. They would boss people around and they would tell people what to do. Now they got demoted. They were no longer in such high positions. Actually, their position was given to Mordechai. And now they have to stand on their feet the whole day, and they become the personal kind of guards, but more like the servant boys of the king's personal chamber, which wasn't a very prestigious job. For them to do jobs like getting... it's okay, darling, don't play with that toy now, please. They had to do jobs like getting...
water at night.
Right, for Achashverosh in the middle of the night. Also, it says that they saw that when Jews would come to the palace to be judged, Mordechai would actually judge the Jews according to Torah laws, not according to the Persian laws. And they were disgruntled on many, many levels. They were actually what's called kinsmen of Haman, meaning they kind of came from the same country or same background. They had bonded with him and Haman.
Bigtan and Teresh?
Bigtan and Teresh, yes. They were good friends of Haman. Now, they weren't sure about Mordechai. According to some opinions, they really wanted to get Mordechai killed. They were very angry at Queen Esther because she had replaced their relative Vashti. And even if Vashti was killed, they really wanted someone who they all knew to become queen. Queen Esther was very ambiguous. Nobody knew who she is. And it kind of scared people and made them uncomfortable. Many of the noblemen were mad that Achashverosh had picked a simple, what today thought was a nobody, but actually we know that Queen Esther was a great, first of great tzaddiket, but even if you wanted someone from royal lineage, she was the great-granddaughter of Shaul HaMelech. Right, thank you, Shner. So all the noblemen were very upset, and the one girl they very much wanted to become queen, most of all was, Haman wanted her to become queen, was who?
Well, her wife.
And his wife, his own daughter, right? She's actually the same daughter who throws the garbage on his head.
I was about to say that.
But she gets rejected, like we said. You remember why she gets rejected?
Because she had diarrhea.
Right. She kept on, but it's a bit not so polite to say, but she kept on soiling herself. Anytime the guards came, and she smelled so terrible that they rejected her. And they said, this girl must be very sick, something's wrong with her. She can't even be brought to the palace to even compete. So they were disgruntled on many, many levels. And it says actually Bigtan and Teresh wanted to kill Mordechai. They wanted to kill Queen Esther, and they wanted to kill Achashverosh. Now, they weren't the only ones who wanted it. Remember that Achashverosh in many ways was a big bully. He always had a terrible self-esteem. He always felt bad about himself, even opinions that hold that he was in fact Koresh's biological son, meaning he was his real son, and not just the stable boy who made his way to power. even they say that he felt like he's nothing compared to his father, Koresh, who was so great and mighty. But let's keep it to our medrash that we're using. The scenario is that he doesn't even come from royal blood. And Achashverosh, just like anyone who feels very bad about themselves, it's okay, is constantly bullying other people. He gains control. He wants to show he's powerful by hurting others. I'm not here today to talk a lot about bullying because I want to have a full discussion at some point. But yeah, of course you're gonna paper. But no, it's okay, darling. But at some point we should talk about it. But the reality is, children, that kids who bully other kids are kids who feel very bad about themselves. Inside, they don't feel good. They're not confident. They don't feel like, hey, I'm a great kid. They don't have a healthy self-esteem. These kind of kids feel bad about themselves and therefore try to get themselves into a position of power, feel like they're in control by hurting others. And Mordechai, not Mordechai, Achashverosh was every bit that kind of personality. And he would throw people around, he would change people's positions around, and nobody felt secure with Achashverosh as king. Nobody knew what the next day would bring. And in reality, Bigtan and Teresh knew that if they were to bump off Achashverosh, meaning if they were to get rid of Achashverosh, no one would cry too much. But what did they figure? The best thing would be if they got Achashverosh killed and put the blame on Mordechai. Now, over here, the Medrash teaches us that the fact that Queen Esther never revealed her background and nobody knew she's related to Mordechai, in many ways saved them, because had they known that Queen Esther and Mordechai were really related, they would have claimed that look, Mordechai is the one who really killed Achashverosh, and Mordechai and Esther putting the blame on Bigtan and Teresh. And look, they're related. Why did the king suddenly get assassinated, an assassination plot so soon after he marries Queen Esther? Must be that her relative Mordechai plotted all this. And so their point was, what they were trying to do was to assassinate Achashverosh and put the blame on Mordechai, and subsequently they'd get rid of Esther. There's no King Achashverosh, Esther has no power. And Bigtan and Teresh spoke Tarshish. And at the time, if I'm remembering correctly, now I remember, there was a whole rebellion by part of the Greek Empire dating all the way back to the days of Koresh. And the Greeks constantly, even though they were one of the 127 countries under the rule of Achashverosh, the Greek Empire, or this particular Greek colony, I don't know how big it was, were constantly trying to throw off the yoke of Paras and Madai. And Bigtan and Teresh felt, and this had started all the way from the days of Koresh and was still going on now into Achashverosh's rule. And they felt that if they could present Achashverosh's head to the Greeks, because they felt the Greeks were powerful enough to take over and that they will succeed, they're going to become high and mighty and get into a very high position in the government once the Greeks take over. So they were very confident, and they were very foolish actually, but nobody really realized the connection between Mordechai and Esther. And when they start to plot against Achashverosh, it says that at one point they even tried to rope in Mordechai without being explicit, without saying exactly, we want to kill Achashverosh. They didn't use it in so many words, but they even tried to pull in Mordechai into the plot because they felt like, you know what, he is the head of all the guards, it's going to be easier, and then in the end we'll put the blame on him, and etc., etc. But Mordechai knew better than that and just said he was involved, just showed no interest and pretended he didn't understand what they're looking to do, and he just ignored the whole situation. And Bigtan and Teresh starts to plot in Tarshish, the language of Tarshish. Now, Mordechai was from the
weird.
almost Anshe Knesset Gedolah, with this starts with the Samach. Sanhedrin. Thank you. He was from the Sanhedrin. If you wanted to be part of the Sanhedrin, you had to talk all 70 languages of the world. And Achashverosh knew it. Now, he didn't let on that he knows Tarshish. He was actually, a part of his job in the palace was to be an interpreter. And it's incredible that Bigtan and Teresh didn't pick up on the fact that he would understand Tarshish because he was Achashverosh's interpreter, because he knew so many languages. But they figured Tarshish is such a far-flung country. They thought, nah, he'd never know that language. It's so few people talk Tarshish. No way Achashverosh knows, and they weren't careful. And of course, sorry, not Achashverosh, I meant Mordechai. No way would Mordechai know what we're told. You can enjoy playing Lego, no problem. But we have to, guys. We only have a few more minutes, and we have to go to sleep.
Okay.
And they become very not careful in front of Mordechai. And Mordechai, not that they told him per se, but they were sure he couldn't understand. Of course, Mordechai understood every word. And Mordechai was smart enough to understand that if they got rid of Achashverosh, they would also get rid of Esther. And he also was smart enough to understand that the plot wasn't just about getting rid of Esther, but it would affect him too. And if it got known that Esther is actually Jewish, people are going to start blaming it happened because of Esther, it happened because of Mordechai, and it's going to cause a lot of trouble for the Jews at large. And Mordechai sends a message to Queen Esther, and he tells her, Esther, these two yokels, I don't know if they call them yokels, but whatever, have put poison.
Advisors.
They were not advisors, darling. At this point
You know what I heard?
at this point,
You know
they
what I
were.
heard today was something new?
Yeah, darling.
That, when it says in the Megillah today, we were learning about this, that really Achashverosh wasn't talking to Achashverosh never really talked to Esther face to face.
Right.
He only
Because he thought it's below his dignity, because he
Yeah.
thought she's just a commoner, you're right.
and I never
Till he finds out that she's actually
a descendant from
a descendant of Shaul HaMelech, that's right. And but that comes on later, much later on in the Megillah. And we should actually finish, it's only a week to Purim.
Yeah.
It's going to taking so long, but I'm glad we're learning it fully. One of the people who was very involved in the plot, but didn't make it known so much, he was very, very, very manipulative, but very much wanted this plot to go through, was
Tell me. Haman.
Yes, Haman.
Really?
Haman, yes. Haman was actually part of this plan, and that's why at the end of the story, when Charvona tells Achashverosh about the tree he built and all that, the one, he actually reveals to him at that point that Haman was even part of the plot to kill him so many years earlier. Charvona knew. Many of them knew. I remember many of the nobility knew what was going on. They just kind of turned a blind eye. Nobody cared much for Achashverosh. And Mordechai tells Queen Esther, and he tells her, don't tell the king. Say you found out. I don't need the honor. I don't need the respect. I want the king to trust you, to love you, to respect you. It's more important. You should be in a powerful position than me. But of course, Queen Esther, because of her tremendous concern for Mordechai and wanting to, like, he should get the credit. One second, darling. She reveals to Achashverosh that it's actually Mordechai who uncovered the plot. And when Bigtan and Teresh, actually children, were told, one second, that Bigtan and Teresh had so many connections in the palace that as soon as Achashverosh finds out, already the spies in the palace ran to Bigtan and Teresh and said, listen, you've been discovered. Get rid of that poison you have. And they did, but not fast enough. And by the time Achashverosh comes to check it out, they're found with enough poison in their possession. Because remember, they were the ones who would bring his water to him at night. And wine. And they're found out. But that's how powerful they were, children. We think that, two stupid advisors, sorry not to use that word, they weren't at all children. They were very powerful. They had many connections in the palace. And they were almost saved, but of course they weren't in the end. And it's time to write down what happened. And once they were actually very gruesomely killed, very horribly killed, which we won't go into.
Was that hang?
Before they were hung, they were stabbed in the most. Never mind, doesn't matter. They got hurt very badly, but children, before they were killed, actually Haman tried very hard to gain a pardon for them.
What does that mean?
That they should be forgiven. And it's incredible that with it all, he still gets put to such a high position in power. He did so many wrong things, but still, by Hashgacha Pratit, and we'll talk about it later, Hashem makes it that he's still put into a position of power. And Mordechai, who saves the king, he doesn't get any credit, nothing. Doesn't get credit. It's written in a book, but they don't give him a gift or reward or anything. Later on, Hashem was saving the reward for when he needed it. And children, sorry, I'm not concentrating, I'm busy drawing. And Bigtan and Teresh are hung, and it's time to write down what happened. Now, who were the king's scribes? Who remember it?
Haman's son.
Right, Haman's more than one son, actually, a few of his sons.
Yeah, okay.
But the main one was Shimshi.
It sounds like a Jewish name, like Shimshon.
Oh, it sounds like Shimshon, but it wasn't Shimshi. And it says that Queen Esther really suspected that Shimshi is going to alter the account when he's writing it down.
What does that mean?
I mean, he's not going to write it accurately that it was Mordechai who saved his life. And even Achashverosh himself suspected it. And she could give Mordechai a reward there and then immediately, because supposedly she wasn't supposed to tell the king that Mordechai saved his life. And she was too embarrassed that Mordechai would find out at this point now that she went against his will, and she notified King Achashverosh. But Hashem was doing all this to save it for the right time, when would be the right time for Mordechai to get his reward, when the decree was going against the Jews. But even then, children, Shimshi is successful in, even then, not writing clearly that it was Mordechai, and Mordechai saved his life, and we'll talk about it more when we get to that point in the story. But they quickly write about the thing, and they put it away. Queen Esther didn't really want Mordechai to get the reward. She's scared he's going to shout at her. Not shout at her, but she was concerned that, not angry even, but she had disobeyed him for his own sake, and in order to honor him and respect him. Haman certainly didn't want Mordechai to get a reward, and everybody hoped it's going to be put into the book and just forgotten about, which is what Haman and his sons tried to do. And true enough, it's written down that Mordechai saved the king's life, but
Not only such a
nobody
like,
gives Mordechai
respect.
the reward. And it actually gets forgotten about incredibly.
Really?
You'd think that somebody, like it slips the king's mind, like, oh yeah, Mordechai saved my life. But you'd think that he would give Mordechai some respect and feel so good that he saved his life, but nothing. And ironically, at this point, Haman gets to power. And you know why? Part of the reason was?
Why? Because he took the ring.
Well, not yet. Not after the ring yet. But you're right. He does get very, very powerful when he gets the ring. Achashverosh at first was very, very angry with Haman. He hated him because he got his precious Vashti killed. When Achashverosh finally marries Queen Esther, he so loves her. And not only that, she saves his life.
And he completely
forgets about Vashti. And he thinks, whoa, it's only because of Haman that I got Queen Esther as a wife. It's only because of Haman that I have Queen Esther who saved my life. And so in a twisted way, Haman gets rewarded for what Queen Esther does, for saving the king's life, and for what Mordechai did for saving saving the king's life. And instead of Mordechai getting the reward, instead of Queen Esther getting the reward, Haman gets the reward. And Haman is put up to the zenith of power. He is put and made the top advisor. Now, if you remember in the beginning of the story, I was saying he was actually one of the 7 councilmen, one of the 7 advisors.
Oh, yeah, right.
But he was the least important. But at this point, he is made the most highest position. Now, what was the problem? What was Haman's original profession? He was a barber. Actually, he wasn't just a barber. He was also a bath attendant.
What's that?
You
used to put people in the bath?
Yes, to help people in the bath, pour their hot water for them.
So he's basically a plumber.
Kind of. Worse than a plumber. He was there to wash people's feet and stuff. And there were many people who got their hair cut by him. Many people whose job it was to pour hot water. Many people who had water poured on their back by him. And it was a joke. Nobody really could come to respect him. Generally, children, the king never had to make a decree that everyone has to bow down to someone second in command. It used to be that all the noblemen would give like a little kneel and give a little bow kind of thing, maybe go down on one knee or some form of kind of light show of respect. And all the other people would bow fully, would prostrate themselves fully. But what happened with Haman was nobody was bowing down to him. Actually, when he first came to power, he was the laughing stock. People were like, yeah, the guy who gave me the haircut. Now, of course, it made Haman livid. Haman was fuming. And just like any real bully, he had no self-esteem and felt really bad about himself and had to start using force and power and killings and executions to I love it. Let me see. Oh, cute. Very nice.
I only use my spare piece.
Very nice. So nice, darling. But come, let's finish up. It's late. Okay. And he had to use brute force to had to use brute force to establish himself in power. And even that didn't help, to the point that Achashverosh had to make a decree. And the decree was that everyone has to bow down fully to Haman. Not just the regular common people. But sorry, now to finish this thought. But even the noblemen, you see, Mordechai was a nobleman. He was part of the king's courts. He was part of the king's what's it called? Advisors, head of the guards and all that. He shouldn't have had to bow down to Haman Bechlal, but because of Haman's and on top of it, he was a slave because of the whole deal with what happened during the war. Actually, I found out the war they were fighting against was in the second year of Ahasuerus's rule, and it was against some West Indies, some Indian province. It's the country of India, one of the small West Indian...
What was Russia back then in the times of Purim?
I don't know if Russia was inhabited because it was, especially white Russia is very cold. I actually don't know. I have to look. You know what? I have to ask Tati. He'll know. I don't know whether...
Sorry, like it?
I love it.
Maybe that because you wore it?
Right, he wore the king's choshen. Beautiful.
Not the king's.
And the wine should be shown to everyone. The beautiful drawing you made. It's
Yeah,
so nice.
I didn't know.
The choshen and the wine and the...
I just followed the spell.
Oznei Haman, the homentashen, and what's this one?
The what?
The cup in it. Ah, beautiful. The bottle of cup. Okay, but let's finish this thought, guys. Actually, now everyone has to bow down to Haman and Mordechai. Now, Haman carried I want to hear a joke. Okay, tell me a joke quickly and then we finish.
Okay.
So I keep saying we'll finish if we don't.
Why is some people call Haman Hangman?
I have no idea why they called him
Because he
Haman.
was also hangman.
That's so cute. He got hung on the gallows, you're right. A well-deserved end to him. Children, Haman carried an idol dangling around his
Only a few
neck, which actually, right, but it was actually very against Torah, firstly, and also against the freedom of religion that Persia had. Persia was a country that boasted, the empire boasted that there was freedom of religion. Nobody was forced to do anybody else's religion. And he was not really, this was not part of Ahasuerus's decree. When Ahasuerus decreed that they have to bow down to Haman, he didn't include his Getchka, his idol. But Haman took advantage, and Haman carried his Getchka, and he believed that this Getchka, this idol, this pesel, is what brought him to power and saved him through the clutches of Vashti and all that. And he would carry it and he'd want everyone to bow down to it. Obviously, Mordechai would not budge and wouldn't bow down. And of course, as you said, that Haman was in fact
did he knew that he wanted to bow down to the idol?
Yeah, of course he knew. Haman was in fact his slave. But children, it's important to note, just we should get them for the record, he wasn't a slave completely. He was only supposed to be a slave one day a week. Only once, when Mordechai shared all the provisions. And by the way, I told you, I think the first time round that they sieged for a year. They didn't. The siege over the West Indies was for 3 years. West Indies are one of those Indian provinces. Was for 3 years, and after only 1 year, Haman used up all the provisions and had nothing left for his platoon. And he had actually sent 12,000 soldiers. Mordechai attacked from the east with 6,000 and Haman attacked from the west with 6,000. Right, but of course Haman was foolish and didn't splattered it all on fancy parties and trying to bribe his way into higher and higher power. But children, Mordechai, kids, is not, it feels like because he's supposed to be a slave one day a week, on top of it, he's not intimidated by him. He's not going to bow down to him. And he had tattooed it onto, not tattooed it, some say tattooed it on his legs, some say it was, he just, on an armor that they wore by their feet. Something that kind of sword, or something that held the sword, the sheath of the sword, that was also a protection for the leg, by the feet, further down, whatever. And Mordechai made sure, I forgot the name of it, to wear this piece of armor whenever Haman walked by. And he stood up straight and tall with his back straight and his head held high to show, I'm not intimidated by you. I am not afraid of you. And I am not bowing down to you. I'm not taking any of this. And this enraged Haman above all, because remember that Haman was such an insecure leader. Not leader, he wasn't a leader, he was a brute force.
He was just a barber, a slave.
Right, but